Welcome back to the Interior Analysis Podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Jelani T. Kelly.
I'm Evan Westman.
And today we are talking about Godzilla Minus One.
Yeah, and we are joined by Angel Michelle as our guest. Welcome, Angel.
How's it going, guys?
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
good to
being
have you.
here. So, initial stuff. This was directed by Takashi Yamazaki, also written by Takashi Yamazaki, Ishiro Honda, and Takeo Murata. Budget of $15 million somehow, and it grossed $116 million worldwide. I have seen it a total of 3 times now, once alone on Netflix, once with my dad and brother, and then once alone again after for this episode. All time, I didn't watch the Japanese dub. I watched it all in English, all times. Yeah, what's you guys' history with this, if any?
Angel, you can take that if you want.
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, so honestly, I wasn't really considering checking this out until my uncle started talking about it, and he gets kind of typically he'll follow internet opinions for the most part, but usually he's not wrong if something is at least fairly okay. So I kept thinking about it, and then I kept hearing on Discord over and over how cool this was. And I wasn't super familiar with Godzilla stuff. I've never seen the old movies. I've seen the 2014 one. I've seen those MonsterVerse ones, and I'm oh, okay, those are pretty cool. And I've seen Godzilla kaiju alternatives, but I was pleasantly surprised when I managed to catch this. I think both times I've watched it, I've seen it twice. Both times I've watched it by myself. But it's one that I think next time I watch, I definitely want to do the minus color version in a group, because I kind of want to see how that goes.
I did the minus color my second time. I can report that it is also good. I don't feel like either is noticeably better. That they both look good. It's just kind of different flavors. It's like listening to a good song, the recorded version and the live version, pretty much, as long as they don't change anything too drastic. Would be that's how I would compare the two.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I feel like black and white versions are getting bigger now. I think Nightmare Alley did one a couple years ago. I know the Walking Dead TV show did them a few years ago. It can be cool and grittier, but sometimes it just is well, it's the same movie again, but black and white,
Yeah, I've been wanting to watch the black and chrome version of Fury Road. That's the only one aside. I know, Jelani, I know you didn't like it, but I want to see it. It seems pretty good. I guess it really shouldn't tangibly change it. You're really just getting rid of the color. But it's kind of an interesting artistic choice, and they had both on Netflix, so I figured if I was going to rewatch it, I might as well do the black and white. Yeah, did you have more initial stuff?
Yeah, I was going to talk about... Well, I was floored the first time out seeing this. I cared so much about the human characters, which is why it's my topic. But with each subsequent viewing, I found myself caring less and less, kind of laughing a little bit at the cheesiness. Like I said, I watched it in English. It might hit different in Japanese. I don't know.
So wait, sorry, you watched with English voice actors dubbing over. Okay. I did not do that. I had the just subtitles both times.
Yeah, it comes across a little cheesy through the dub, but that's also a really difficult job. One, trying to speak at the pace at which the original actors did. I've done ADR once before. It's not easy. Trying to speak at whatever pace the original shot is shot in, and then also adding emotion on top of that, or playing the character how you think the original actor played the character. It's a whole lot of layers to it. So I acknowledge it's very much not an easy job, but like I said, with each watch, it kind of came across a little cheesy. Good cheesy, though. Not bad cheesy.
More often than not, don't they maybe record the ADR either alone or like in a studio, kind of like in separate booths and stuff like that too, because like that can be hard. Obviously, there's voice acting for like animation and stuff like that, right? But that can also be very different because they're usually like, even if they're not together, like the animation is almost designed around that, around like what the recording is, as opposed to ADR where you're basically you are reading a translation of something, but you're not actually like, it's hard to fully picture the situation. I think I tried doing it for Squid Game at first, the dub, and I literally I switched to the original Korean, I believe, because it's yeah, it just sounded off. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And I was noticing too, because when I was rewatching this one last night, for whatever reason, when it turned on, it started off with the English dub, and I was curious for a sec, so I left it on for a minute, and the dialogue was, it legitimately sounded like it was just completely different sentences. Like, they cut stuff down considerably, like, not even for, like, even from what the subtitles are, which was kind of confusing, because also, like, then that kills the pacing of it, where, like, they're talking and nothing's happening voice-wise, because they cut out the voice and they put in, and the English voice was already done. It was just very strange, so I tend to try to watch it with the subtitles if I can.
Yeah, I feel like the subbed versions are always a little bit more, like, pure. It's what was there originally. The thing I always miss with that is, because I don't know the language, I feel like I'm missing some of the performance that the actor's giving, because that's the thing I just really like about, like, good performance that I see done in English, is just how does the actor say words, and because I don't know the words, I can't hear those little inflections that they're giving.
You don't know what's being emphasized, and
yeah, it's kind of too bad, but I'm not a purist of like dubs versus subs or anything, so it's good we have both perspectives, I think, on here.
Yeah. Oh, minor sidebar. What got me thinking about that was sort of something cool that was in the opposite direction. Was, I don't know if you guys know, Prey did a Comanche dub.
I didn't know that.
I have
Predator
heard of
movie
that.
A couple years ago. Yeah, so I actually watched it, and it's cool because they actually had the actors who played the characters like do the dub, and it still feels a little bit like a dub, but because it's the actors themselves, it felt like they were clicking more with the emotion, because obviously they were recording this probably in a studio later, as it, like they didn't re-record all the scenes on site, and like okay, we're gonna do this taking Comanche now. No, they actually but because it's the same actors and like you can hear their voices, it doesn't pull you out of it as much. Sometimes like certain actors who are bilingual or multilingual will do that. Like I think Michelle Yeoh's done a couple of movies where she has done both the original language and her English dub for whatever language she's doing. So it'll be in that particular movie. So like I find that tends to be really cool, when they can actually get the actors to do both, because then you feel the character in the performance anyway.
This is a good happy medium.
Exactly. I don't know why I thought you were going to say Happy Meal for a second.
No.
That's just my
Feel
brain
weird
not
Happy
working
Meal.
right today.
Moving on from dub, the Ginza attack is my favorite scene, and it crescendos in that blast that leaves even Godzilla damaged. It's so cool. And then, fun fact, I had to look it up because they don't explain it in the movie. It's not like they have one of those lines, Evan, where all the Japanese people come together and they're like, "This is our Godzilla -1."
Yes. Now he has truly.
I almost want that now, because I'm imagining it now and it would be so funny.
It's called Godzilla -1 because Japan was at 0, the country's lowest after World War II. So adding Godzilla made everything worse, so less than 0 is -1. A Netflix article also stated that it's set even before the time of the original Godzilla, so minus Prime Godzilla, which I guess is 0, -1.
Yeah, because I think that's the 50s, and this was set in like 48, 47, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, between like 45 and 47, I think, because they show dates, and it's basically like the very end of the war, and it goes Like, I think the whole thing is like over the course of year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So like it's focusing on the rebuilds, both near like the very end of the war and then the aftermath.
That's all I had for my initial stuff.
Just I'm glad, Jelani, that you talked about the title too, because that was one of my favorite parts. Was like when I found out what the title means, and like it kind of speaks to the whole theme of it. And like I'll go more into this like when we get to like top like primary topics and things like that. For me, the thing that was cool about it was just like how it wasn't focusing on Godzilla like at all for a lot of it. You know, like it was very focused on the human characters from the very start. Like I looked this up and it was like, I think Godzilla's only got like 12 minutes of screen time.
Wow.
Or something like that in the whole movie, which like...
It feels like way more.
It does, but I actually realized, I think it's the way that you spread it out and the impact that the character has when he slash it slash whatever they identify as is on screen, you know? Like if you think about like the Ginza attack, that's such a big scene that even if it's like relatively short, it feels like such a big part of the movie that you don't notice that Godzilla's only there for a few minutes, right? And like he also just like there's not as much build up to him either when he first appears. He just kind of shows up, which I thought was super cool. Like I'm like, oh wait, he's right here. Like there's not going to be like him rising out of the ground. Like he does kind of like pop up on the camera and it's dark, but like there's not like a moment where they're like, you know, going from the ground all the way up. You know, it's just kind of a thing that happens. So we're caught by surprise as much as the characters are, you know, which is really cool. And like that focus on the human side of it, I think, is why this feels so like different from something like, you know, even Godzilla 2014, because that one, like, it also focused on the human characters, but it was very much focused on like the destruction part as opposed to like their relationships with each other and their relationships to like their society and things like that, and the different themes that were going on. Like it was basically a disaster movie happening like during the disaster, but there was so much focus on like hiding Godzilla from the camera as much as you could until like the big reveal of him. So there was still so much of that build up and focus on Godzilla himself.
Well, like you guys, I had seen some hype about this. I think one of my supervisors at one of my jobs was hyping this up to me for a little bit. I think he saw it in IMAX and was like, dude, you gotta get... I don't have an IMAX theater near me, so I couldn't, but I did finally see it on Netflix, and yeah, this lives up to the hype. I will second you fully on the Ginza attack as the best scene in this movie. I think it's up there with the first full Kraken attack and, spoilers for Nope, Jean Jacket eating the crowd in Nope as, like, the best... Like, I think those are the three best monster scenes in any movie that I've seen. I saw a Letterboxd review after this that said, like, there are moments in this that I would hate in another movie, and I felt exactly like that. I don't quite know why. I feel like we might get into it a bit with our topics, but when Noriko was alive at the end, I was like, I do not care how or why. I'm just so glad that she's like, I'm like, there's no shot that they're going to be able to explain this away. I could not care less. Like,
I have an explanation for it.
I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Is it grounded in any kind of realistic logic?
No.
Okay, I kind of figured.
I have a theory about it too, but I know my theory is probably wrong. It's a little less happy than the ending, but still.
Is it that
we'll
she's
get
a
to
clone?
No, I didn't even think of that, but that would be crazy. That would be nuts. No, it's
what?
I don't know. You guys said it was like not grounded, so
she's a Godzilla baby, taking the form of a human to infiltrate society.
So she's a Skrull.
Yes. Yes, but her main form is a human-sized version of Godzilla, like one of those people in those dinosaur outfits that run around like this.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
Jelani, what's your theory?
So, well, this is under my human solution topic, so we'll just get into it.
Okay,
But
well, I had
I'll
one
start
more
with
reaction I wanted to
Oh, go ahead.
say, because this doesn't fit anywhere. I was shocked when I found out this would cost $15 million and looks this good.
Yeah.
Before I found that out, I was going to say that I think the creator should have won for best visual effects last year. I still kind of stand by that because that is not a terribly good movie, unfortunately. But it looks incredible. Like, it's an $80 million movie that looks like a $300 million movie. But
Yeah.
to its credit, this is a $15 million movie that looks like 100 or 150. So, like, I mean, either way, hats off. And also, I'd forgotten about this until you mentioned the 2014 Godzilla, but the director of the creator made the 2014 Godzilla, Gareth Edwards.
Oh, he did, didn't he? That's why I knew.
Yeah,
That's why I recognized his name
he's-
when I just saw the creator too, and I must have, yeah, that must have been where it came from.
Wait, didn't he also do the Kong, the
No,
New Empire?
I don't think he did either of those. He did Rogue One.
He did do Rogue One. That's his big. That's part of what drew me to it. Was like visually, obviously, after seeing Rogue One, it's gonna be great. You know?
Yeah. Like, between all of those, like, I don't understand how all of Hollywood is not consulting this guy to, like, do their VFX for them, because I haven't seen the 2014 Godzilla. I'm not really a fan of Rogue One, but he's made 2 movies that just are blowing every other tentpole movie out of the water in terms of visual effects. Like, the creator's not great in terms of script, but there are just some gorgeous shots in that movie that are definitely VFX.
Yeah, and just the world design too.
I was thinking of Adam Wingard.
Okay, yeah,
no
he's
Gareth
Oh,
Edwards.
yeah.
he did
He's
he did the new one. Did either of you see the one from this year, the Godzilla versus what is it, Godzilla X Kong?
Yeah, the New Empire. I saw it with my dad and brother.
I watched the trailer and I wanted to cry. I'm not gonna lie.
Happy or
it
sad
looks like,
tears?
no, very very sad tears. And I don't like being that level of mean, but because here's the thing too. I liked Godzilla 2014. I liked Kong. I didn't love King of the Monsters, but I thought Godzilla vs. Kong was like okay. I saw this trailer and I'm like, it looks like a Marvel movie. Like, there's a shot that encompasses everything that I don't like about it, which is the Godzilla and Kong running next to each other, and Kong has this power glove on, and you see Godzilla just running, and like they try to make it not look ridiculous, but because it's Godzilla with his Godzilla proportions, it doesn't look right because he's not a human or human shaped running, but they're trying to make him run like a human. It just like it looks, I don't know. Like, I love like that kind of like Marvel-esque action in its own way, but I cannot, especially after seeing -1, like before I was gonna watch that one. I was like,
that
it
wasn't a
cemented
good
for me.
idea.
Like, I can't know, because I was like I should watch GXK first because I heard Godzilla -1's actually good, but I was like, I don't want to watch GXK, so I'm gonna watch Godzilla -1, and then maybe I'll get to the other one. And now it's cemented for me that like I'm never gonna watch it.
Right. It's like having a steak and being like, Big Mac? I don't know if I'm feeling that right now.
I'm gonna have the steak first.
Right.
I'll have
yeah.
the Big Mac after a few beers.
Right.
That's how I
It's-
feel. That's legitimately how I feel about GXK too. It's like maybe
After a
like,
few beers, that's the
after
best
a few
way to
beers,
watch
like
GXK.
I'll be like, I'll do this as a movie night with some friends and make it into a drinking game, because then it'll be fun.
I don't think it's worth watching alone.
Yeah, that sounds
Probably
like
not.
I think it's a perfect tipsy movie. It's like that's not one you watch by yourself sober.
No, I'll be sad if I do that. I don't think I could handle it.
It is
Yeah.
ridiculous. But I really like that shot from the trailer. It was in the movie, so it was kind of cool. The Infinity Gauntlet equivalent, I didn't care for. It was kind of dumb, but look where we are with those movies.
They're still making a lot of money, so they're
They
probably
are.
going to keep making them.
They're gonna make so many of them. Yeah, I just hope that if they're gonna do MonsterVerse more, they kind of like focus on other monsters too. Like, there's been a lot of Godzilla and a lot of Kong, and that's great. But I want to see like new stuff, like either original stuff or like maybe like just like other focuses. Like, like Kong being a period piece was really cool, I thought, and I would have loved to see that. Like more of that.
Yeah, I feel like they've kind of boxed themselves into a place where they can't really do that again. just because of the continuity.
Yeah, I mean, Monarch has the Monarch TV
I
show,
forgot
which
about
is
Monarch.
which is actually how I got back into this Godzilla stuff. Is I actually binged that, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it. But again, it's got like more of a focus on like the human aspect of it, and it's also got like a very engaging period era storyline, like showing how Monarch was founded. That showed like that they can do it and still kind of keep with the continuity pretty well, because there's not as much like completely established stuff, and also like so many things don't care about continuity anymore. So in a way, like I wouldn't be mad at it.
If we're done with initial,
Yeah, that was my
Let's-
last one.
Yeah.
get into the topics. We'll start with mine because we have to. The Noriko survival. My topic is titled "The Human Solution." We'll start with. It's mainly positive, so we'll start with the negative thing. I thought Noriko surviving was a little more than unbelievable. Yeah, we didn't see a body, but I thought they were just. It's what is it, PG-13? I'm assuming. I thought
Yeah.
they were just shying away from
Yeah, I think it is.
excessive violence, so her getting hit by the debris, there's only one thing to assume. It's not falling into a body of water or something and somehow they swam away or something ridiculous. No, she got shredded by glass and rocks and all sorts of beautiful sharp debris. There was no way. But my brother mentioned that either the director, I forget, I think the director might have confirmed, or it was just a theory he read, that she survived after. Angel, your theory was the clone? No, the Godzilla
so my
baby.
theory wasn't the
That was
clone. Mine is different.
Yeah.
I'll get into that I'll jump on into my theory in a minute, but that's the clone was I guess one that you heard, right, Evan?
No, I didn't hear that. I just figured that was one of yours when you said you had him. I don't care how she's alive. I'm not really here for theories.
Oh, got you. Okay.
It just works for me. I don't have to have it explained.
Well, then the clone thing is Evan's theory, which is also
Okay.
a good theory.
Sure.
Which, a theory that I appreciate, but mine is like a little simpler.
Okay, so I say your theory first because I want to see how close it is.
Okay, yeah. So my theory is one that I know is most likely not correct, but to me, just with the lighting and everything afterwards, like it kind of makes the most sense. Like my theory is that even with the ejector seat or whatever, Koichi didn't survive, the plane crash or whatever, and because everything after that feels a little too idealistic, a little too perfect. Like obviously, like she was, like you said, she was decimated by rocks and shards of glass and just the general atomicness of the blast that Godzilla created. Like it was literally a nuclear explosion, so it makes no sense that even Koichi survived because he was pushed into an alley. That doesn't make sense to me.
but that's how the dog survives an Independence Day. So
Yes,
which is not a good bar for
but-
realism, but like
But here to counter that, the dog was such a good boy that they couldn't kill the dog in Independence Day, so he had to survive. So I have no issue with that. But no, it's also a little bit unbelievable that like anyone survived that, because like he blew up the nuclear power plant. Like that doesn't make any sense. But even saying that everybody who survived that did survive at least up until the Godzilla attack at the end, so that like Godzilla is destroyed. If Koichi dies, then like the other stuff that happens, like the note from Noriko that came at like the exact perfect time, the fact that there was even an ejector seat option in the first place, like all of that could line up perfectly. And then like her being kind of okay in the hospital, a hospital which legitimately was lit like heaven.
that is true.
That made me feel like at the very least somebody else is going to have a theory that he is dead at the end, and that his reward for making the choice to, at the very least, like even if he thought he was going to survive, like to like not only sacrifice himself for his people, but also to at least try and live, to take care of his family, like that sort of ideal world was his reward, so like it takes away from sort of that unbelievable element of like, yeah, Noriko's not alive, there's no way. But I didn't make the movie, so I don't know.
Solid. That's Not as bad as what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Oh boy. Now I'm
Yeah.
really excited to hear what you have to say.
It's brief, but still, it's something. So, my brother mentioned something that either the director confirmed or was just a theory. I don't remember. She survived because after Godzilla shoots the blast, I said at the tanks, I guess it was the nuclear power plant, shoots the blast at the nuclear power plant in the Ginza attack, parts of his scales flew off. You see how he's healing after the blast.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So
I know
she
where this is going.
survived because of...
And one of those scales attached to Noriko, which healed / saved her.
Is that why she has the thing over her eye? Is that where the shard went in? It was a little piece of
It's
scale.
possible. I think that's actually part of the theory.
That's amazing. She's gonna take it off, and it's gonna be like the guy from House of the Dragon that has like the diamond in his eye. It's gonna be like that.
Amen. Yeah.
I kind of hate both of those. Well, okay. Like, they're both kind of, like, okay, the one that he's dead, that makes sense as, like, a theory that's been posited. Like, there's, I think there's subtextual evidence for that.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I would rather
Yeah.
that everything that we saw happened actually happened. But it's just my theory of like, this is the only way this would make any logical sense.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really looking for logic, so...
The look my dad gave me when he saw her sitting in the hospital, I couldn't help but start laughing. 'Cause he was...
It is kind of that moment. It's like... but that was the thing. Like, in another movie, like, that didn't have me as hooked into the characters, I would have just been like, oh god, they're gonna be alive. Oh my... Okay. 2 stars. Like...
He gave me a look like I'm the one that wrote and filmed the movie. Like, you
Why'd you
made
do
her
this to me?
survive. Yeah, it was that type of look. And I was like, I couldn't help but start laughing because I couldn't believe it either, even the first time.
I think it just kind of speaks to how well the movie invests you that I don't care, though. Because, like, I usually am a huge stickler. I hate it when characters get resurrected. It happens way too much. And even as I could see it happening, I was like, please let her be alive. I don't care. I don't care that this doesn't make sense. But most of the time when that happens, I'm like, ugh, okay. I guess that didn't matter. I guess there's no consequences ever in any movie. There's only one character that I want that to happen with right now. I'm not going to say their name because spoilers, but Mission Impossible 7 kills off probably my favorite character in that series. And I just want 8 to bring them back. I don't care how. I think the series is just much better with them in it.
Is it Ving Rhames' character?
No. If you know, you know. Well, if you've seen it, you know. Jelani, where else did you want to go with your topic, though, if we're done with the
Magic
with our
scales?
theories?
Yeah.
Scales.
I wish that
Yes.
was your whole topic. Like, not that I don't want to hear the human solution part, but it would be so funny if it was just your unbelievable anger at this stupid theory. Like,
We'll turn it into a
it's like
30-minute video
like
essay.
Transformers 7, like,
Yeah.
oh, he got hit by some Energon, and now Shia LaBeouf is a Transformer.
God.
Godzilla -1 explained.
So, finally, one of these kaiju movies did the deed of giving us reasons to care about the human characters. I didn't say making the audience care because people have different reactions when the movie doesn't center around Godzilla as the main character. My dad and brother being examples, they just wanted to see Godzilla. No, I don't wish this movie had more human characters, though. I still have that quote of saying, oh boy, I wish this kaiju movie had more human characters. I think they did fine with what they had. But the solution to that thing I introduced years ago, and it was a Godzilla versus Kong, Evan?
Yeah, I think so. At least that's one episode it was brought up.
Yeah. The solution to that thing I introduced as the human problem was quite simply put in the effort and try to make the audience care. Who knew it would be that simple? In this movie, we spend most of the time with them, as Angel said. Was it Angel? I think Angel said it. 12 minutes of screen time.
Oh, with Godzilla, yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only
with
like 12
Godzilla,
minutes
yeah.
of screen time.
Yeah, so we spend most of the time with the humans. The only times we see Godzilla is when he's combating them. My favorite moments that included the humans were the small ships reporting in to help pull Godzilla back to the surface. I don't know, that moment, the first time out, that moment really warmed my heart. Second time too.
See, that's another one that I feel like I would hate in another movie, but I was like, yeah, that works here. That's great.
I don't feel
Rise
like
of
it was. Yeah, I don't feel like. Oh god.
Oh, well, we'll talk. Well, this won't be the last time we mention Dunkirk. Sorry, Jelani, but most of what I'm going to be saying about is how this movie is better than Dunkirk. So
No, he said Rise of Skywalker. I think.
Oh,
you
I
said
said
Rise
Rise
of
of
Skywalker.
Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I said yeah.
yeah, you know what? I was thinking of that moment too, though.
Yeah.
I didn't.
But
I
like
wasn't
this is
thinking
a
of bringing
good
it up,
version
but
of that. Like Rise of Skywalker was not the good version. This is.
So this it warmed my heart. If it okay. Don't attack me in the comments. The essence it gave felt like a Portal's endgame. Like everybody coming in to save the day and help defeat whoever. That's what it felt like, the essence of it. I'm not saying Godzilla earned 10 years of... You get it. So, I really liked that moment. And then, Koichi living. Because I've learned not to grow attached to fictional characters, my trust has just died down over the years, especially after Cyberpunk Edge Runners. And it also depends on who's telling the story. These fictional characters could die at any moment. So it's best to just leave your emotions out of it. That's how I see it. So, given the direction it was going with Koichi feeling like he needed to sacrifice himself, it was nice to see him live. I think Tachibana telling Koichi to live was nice, and it felt like a great moment, but I think what would have helped that moment of Koichi living a little bit more is I would have liked to see what convinced Tachibana to give him the ejector seat. Instead of, because the entire movie he was shouting at him like, the island was your fault, you shouldn't have even been there, you should have died with the other kamikaze pilots, all this stuff. And then he's like, press that button to live though. So I wanted to see what flipped that switch in his head. My only gripe with the human solution in this movie is, yes, they put in a lot of work on the human characters, not only necessary work, but to making them drive the plot. I think they spent a little too much time on them. And that point stands when I watched the movie with my brother and dad, who thought the movie dragged at points, and it being my second time when I watched with them, I kind of agreed. But again, at the same time, it's not meant to be like the American blockbusters, like Kong vs. Godzilla. That my brother and dad, those are more. They enjoy those movies more because they're just there to watch the big monsters fight. Nothing wrong with that. But Godzilla was originally a villain, representative of the United States, and United States as a threat, and also represented nuclear warfare. This feels more true to form to those movies rather than anything America has been doing with the kaiju. So, yeah, human solution. Spend more time with the humans if you want us to care. If you don't, stop giving them so much damn screen time. I don't care who the hell you got for your movie. Anything else y'all got on it?
Well, I was gonna say, jumping off what you just said about the U.S. as a villain, like this movie also does it, albeit like slightly more indirectly, where they make very clear in like that middle like newsreel or whatever that the U.S. Either nuclear tests or like dumping of nuclear waste. I can't remember exactly what they said it was, but it's very clear like this is what created Godzilla, and now like this giant monster, it's not attacking the US right now, it's attacking Japan, because this is like the area that it's living in, you know. So it's like, it's kind of cool that they kind of put in that like subtle nod to it, but they still kept Japan as the central societal focus, you know, because that's where the characters are from, that's what matters to them. And you know, the US is kind of like off in a corner, but they make very clear that like this is still something that they did. You know?
Right, they're kind of like an invisible villain throughout this.
Exactly. And they don't even have like a representative character come in or anything like that, where they're like, they have to have like, not Steve Rogers, but like a Steve Rogers equivalent who's like evil to come in, you know, like, well, this isn't our problem because it's not attacking us. Like, they make it as symbolic, I guess, as they can.
I think it's more powerful that there isn't that character, like the absent. Because if the whole point is their absence, then having that kind of character sort of defeats the purpose. It doesn't really keep with the spirit of what they're going for.
Also, it also wouldn't add anything.
No, if
I
anything,
agree.
it reduces it, right? Because it's turning it into something like tangible that you can see, but I think it respects the audience more to like let it be this kind of like more ambiguous thing, because like no nation is one thing. Bringing it down to one character that could be potentially like a stereotype or a mustache twirling villain, that almost takes away from like the realism of it.
Yeah, and actually, like, I mean, I hadn't really been thinking of this, but not to like get it too much into like American history, but I think if you took like a body count of how many people America has killed, I don't know if negligence is the highest cause, but it is way up there. A lot of like the death and just negative impact that America has had is not always when we like go in and like fight a war. It's the Trail of Tears and just like, okay, we're gonna move these people out of the land that we want and just give them no resources. It's not like a direct killing, like, and even, you know, obviously there's a lot of direct American caused death with the atomic bomb, but there's a lot of post atomic bomb fallout. I don't know the exact history of that, but I'm sure there's a lot more. And this movie kind of explores like what happens after the bomb dropped, like what happens with the survivors. I think it is better that we just have the US mentioned a couple times, but they're not really there.
I think it'd be interesting to add, because it's said, as I stated already, he represents nuclear warfare, but I don't know if it was in the 2014 Godzilla, but I don't ever see the result of that. Like, Godzilla is a nuclear dinosaur. So, and in this movie, they had a little bit of it after the Ginza attack, like, oh, this area is radiated, but nobody had, like 3 people had like a hazmat suit on, or maybe nobody, I don't remember. But radiation's scary and really dangerous and deadly. So I would like to see, I haven't seen Shin Godzilla yet, I don't know what they do with that. I would like to see one of these movies, whether America or Japan does it, focusing on actual, like, the nuclear fallout and damage that a being like Godzilla is capable of. Because I've watched some videos on the effect of what radiation poisoning does to the body, and it's scary.
Like long-term effects,
It's
even down
scary.
to like birth defects too afterwards, like with your children and stuff. It's rough, it's bad. I read Hiroshima in 8th grade, I think, for school, and it was messed up. Like some of the stuff they describe is crazy.
Radiation poisoning feels like evil. Like,
Yeah.
it's really unnatural. Like, it kills cells. It stops cellular regeneration, so you're like decomposing. That's nuts. So I would be interested to see a representation of nuclear warfare and energy and radiation tackle that, because I've watched some clips from Chernobyl that I can't watch the whole show. That freaks me out.
Well, I think Chernobyl might be the closest you get to that, and that is just a really depressing show, because it's just yeah, everyone's dying of radiation poisoning, and they're like, oh, it's only this many. I forget what the metric they use is. I think it's rotengen. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that thing, they're like, it's only 3 this, and then somebody comes in later and is like, no, that's how high your meter goes. It's like 50 times that.
I watched a video, I don't know if I can call it a documentary, but there was a video about, I think it was the title that got me, or maybe it was the title with like subtitle within the thumbnail, whatever, but it was like, The Man Who Cried Blood. I was like, all right, it's the middle of the day. I can be brave enough to watch this.
It's 2 p.m.
Yeah.
I know where I am. I'm good.
This won't scare me at night.
I'm emotionally ready for this.
I was good, but it woke me up to just how scary radiation is, because there was a dude that got hit by he was at a power plant it was in Japan. I forget the guy's name. Rest in peace to him. It was years ago, but yeah, his body was, and it, you know what also adds to the evilness of it? This is a long tangent, but usually when somebody's hit with radiation poisoning, there is a moment where it looks like they're going to be okay, where the damages, the side effects, like, go into remission, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna walk out this hospital any day now, and then it gets worse from there. Like,
oh my
it
God.
is, yeah. So you're affected. You're like, I don't feel right. Things start going wrong with your body. Those effects over a little bit of time go into remission. You're thinking you're gonna be fine, and then it just gets worse, and then doesn't get any better. And I watched a couple of videos on radiation that affected people. It's not fun. And what sucks for the guy I was talking about is his family. They didn't sign a do not resuscitate, so the doctors had to keep reviving him every time he passed. So he kept going through the punishment of radiation poisoning. So obviously I feel like it would be more on the horror side, but as one of the things that Godzilla represents, it would be interesting to see that type of angle. Like, everybody who survived his initial attack, what's going on with you were around him? Like, that can't be safe. So long tangent.
That'd just be really upsetting.
Yeah,
I'm wondering too, though, like, is Godzilla himself, like, heavily radioactive, like, exposure-wise?
yes.
As in, like, because, like, yeah, if he's infecting the ground around him, I think that would be an interesting, like, sort of alternative, like a subplot, maybe, where you're kind of seeing that it is affecting, these other people. Because also, like, he feeds on radiation, too, which is a big thing with all these kaiju in this monsterverse, except
Yeah, doesn't he,
Kong,
like, I think in King of the Monsters, don't they, like, resuscitate him by just nuking him back to life?
Yeah,
basically?
essentially, yeah.
That scene is also my headcanon for what Saito does, because it's Ken Watanabe, I think, that does that. This is a dumb tangent, but that is my headcanon for what happens while Saito is in limbo at the end of Inception, because they have to die to wake up. So I always imagine that, like, since I've seen that movie, I imagine that DiCaprio gets down there and he's like, hey, you're in limbo, we gotta die. And Saito's like, cool, I've been working on this really sick fanfic. Can I just, like, end it this way? And then he like, plays out all of King of the Monsters
for this.
Because he's down there for, like, 50 years in his time, in, like, his perceived time. So I figure he just gets up to some crazy stuff. Anyway, that
would be pretty sick.
Sorry, that's a dumb tangent. That's just, like, that's a thing that I like to think of.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm going to leave that to you, Evan.
I'll probably say it again whenever we do Inception. Because there's no other time unless we're talking about one of those two. And, it's a Godzilla episode.
That's fair. Yeah, that's it. I said everything for my topic. If you guys have more on it, or more tangents, or more info about radiation and staying away from it.
I have no info on radiation, but I would love to learn more about it, honestly. I agree. I just want to say I agree with you, that I think that would be a cool angle to take.
Even if, like you said, even if it's just, it doesn't have to be the whole focus of the movie, but a subplot or something.
Yeah, I think it would make a good subplot. I agree it shouldn't be the whole thing. But yeah, that might be a good route to take.
Especially in a sequel too. Like, if they made sequels to this where it's like, years later and it's like a different set of characters, like, you could see like the nuclear fallout stuff on top of, like, oh, and Godzilla's back too, because obviously the end implies that he's not dead.
I do wonder if they're going to call it Godzilla 0 or Godzilla -2, though. Which one makes more sense?
I don't know.
You typically count up, but,
Well,
yeah.
Now I'm not going to be able to sleep because I can't. I need an answer to that.
The math. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Do you call it Ocean's 12 or Ocean's 30? Yeah.
That's like trying to figure out what Xbox is going to name their next console. Like, I know everybody was freaking out with the 360. It was like, oh, 720 got to be next.
Yep, and
they
then
went
it's not.
nope, we're going to the number one. Okay, so the next one's number 2, right? Nope, we're going to the alphabet now. X and S. What? All right.
Next one, they're going to be like, we're just going to name it Dave. Let's just see what happens.
Or just
Xbox.
X.
So it's Xbox Dave? Nope, just Dave. Dave was my dad's name. I miss him. Let's go.
PlayStation knew what they were doing. They were like, PlayStation 2. That's all it needs. PlayStation 3. Yeah.
Easy to follow.
They're just going to keep going with it, too.
6. Yeah. They can make as many as they want. My other notes for this, something we've talked about in a lot of episodes in the past year is I think Final Destination was the first episode we talked about, like, doing half the work can sometimes be a better way to approach character, instead of, like, you kind of just signal, like, all right, here's this character's one thing. And we kind of, like, pair to that with, if you're in a genre setting, I think you were the one to say it, Jelani, like, you got to do double the work. And I think this movie is a really good example of double the work. You guys are saying, like, we spend so much time with these characters. And at first I was like, maybe it is time, but I feel like it's more than that, because there's other movies that spend as much time. Like, I talked about the human problem in the Big Robots video I did, and I think the biggest offender of that was, at least of those movies, was Pacific Rim 2. That spends a lot of time with characters that I never care about. I was struggling to come up with, like, what actually separates them, and the best I can think is that I can just tell that they actually care in this case. Like, I think it just shines through that, like, there's a subtext that, like, you're not doing anything disingenuously. Like, I feel like there's a couple of things that you feel sometimes of, like, the approach to character that's just like, here's a guy and he's your protagonist, so you care about him, but his wife died, or but she has a kid, or something. That's just like, here's this thing that we just are gonna, like, bank on hoping that you will care about this person. And we're going to use, like, a really simple thing. And that can work sometimes. Like, I think if you're not hinging too much on that, like, John Wick's dog dies. Cool. We'll watch him kill as many people as he needs to. But, like, it's not like we're doing a super strong, like, I'm not invested in John Wick because I don't need to be. I think where you get into the death zone is when you put in something like that that's meant to do a lot of heavy lifting, and you ask too much of it. This movie, I think, really shines through in, like, the specificity. Like, we spend, I think, after that first attack, 20-30 minutes just, like, establishing post-war new normal for these characters, and the fact that it is kind of just this, like, makeshift family that we aren't used to seeing. I think that alone is just way more effective than if this was a traditional family. And it feels a little weird to say that, but I think it just forces the movie to establish it and forces us to spend time with them.
It had more going for it, as far as, like, even just speaking as the main character Koichi going it had more going for him by that point.
Right, you're already invested by the time he meets Noriko and the kid and
instead
that,
of
other woman.
Just having, here's your main character, but his wife is dead, and now he's a loner guy or whatever. We start off the movie, he was supposed to die. He's a kamikaze pilot that was supposed to die, gets cold feet, I don't know what to call it, then gets cold feet again when he's attacked by Godzilla. You know, he's blamed for the death of the people on Odo Island. He gets back home. Things are even worse because there was a fire raid from the war, and his parents are dead now. Okay, that there's that as well. You see how he lives. It's not like he's living in a mansion after the war. And then you also have the makeshift family on top. So by that point, we have so much going for him already before we even really meet the family. Yeah, they did a lot of work.
And not just that too, but jumping off that, what I appreciated a lot, and I noticed it more on my second watch through, is like they begin by building his character in like a very simple way. Like that introduction scene just tells us so much about him, his personality, his current situation, and then like adding in that family dynamic after, it also highlights like other traits about him that we very well might have doubted early on, because it shows that like within the first 20 minutes they establish that like they treat him like he's a coward, but he's not really a coward because he's still doing moral and good and brave and just things. So like at the very beginning, they're basically like, well, you're a bad person because you were supposed to kill yourself for the war and you didn't do that, right? Which I think in a modern sense, most of us would believe is like a bad thing. You don't want to, kamikaze strategy is very bad. I heavily disagree with it, as I think most people do. But they also immediately present that opinion also. They show that like not everybody necessarily thinks that way. They have that one guy that comes up to him by the shore and is like, you know, I kind of agree with what you did. Like, why die? Why sacrifice yourself for this cause when the war's basically already over? And while that's like not all the way to where we are, because like I would say that I think that like he shouldn't do that because like that's an unfair thing to ask of your people on that government side of it. And he's more of like, well, like the war's over anyway, so like it would have made sense maybe for you to do it before, but not now, which like obviously we know is not right either way. But like, yeah, it's still like they at least established that like people like that exist already. And then he gets accused again of being a coward and he's ashamed, but the first thing he's doing is when he gets back, he's looking for his parents. He refuses to abandon this baby that was left to him. He takes in this woman who is taking care of this baby that she also refused to abandon. So we're establishing all these moral characters, but we're showing like that when it comes down to these moral dilemmas, his first instinct is to do the right thing and to help people and to help his people and just like, you know, people in general. And he's not,
help complete strangers.
Exactly. He's not, so he's clearly not a coward. He just didn't want to die. And society is telling him that was a bad thing, but it straight up is just survival instinct. None of them want to. All of them want to go home. All of them want to go do this. All of them wanted to, you know, win and, you know, share in their victory with their families when they got home. And, you know, he comes back and, like, he's lost everything and is still getting shamed and called a coward when it's definitely not something that he deserves. You know? Like, he's basically, like, even that woman, his neighbor, I cannot remember her name. Yes. Sumiko, she is like saying like it's him and people like him that lost them the war, which like we know full well that's not true. That's not true at all. It's just an easy thing to blame people that were, you know, that like, oh well, you didn't follow instructions. It's like, yeah, but they were asking me to die for no reason essentially. It's something that like as much as he, you know, feels guilty about it, he wants to live the entire time. Which is I also think why then like his full arc of like deciding to live as opposed to giving into that whole thing of like what I should have done in the first place is die and now I can die for these people. It's like, but now you have a family to live for. Like you have this kid who you have told not to call you her father because you're so ashamed of yourself, but she thinks of you as a dad and she does need you, you know. And like even if Noriko had been alive, like it wouldn't have changed his choice. Like he didn't know that until, you know, he went to the hospital and she was alive. So as far as he knew, he was leaving this kid an orphan for a second time.
Yeah, I think the moment that really sells me on him as a character, or at least like defines him the best, is when that guy comes up to him and says like, yeah, you could, like, I wouldn't have done it either. I think you made the right call. And we see that it doesn't like make him feel one bit better. Like I think it's more than just that line. It's like he's just stone-faced the whole time, and you like I think that carries through the whole thing, that like we know no matter how anyone rationalizes this to him, he's always gonna think of himself as like, I should have died out there, that was cowardly. And I think that it gives me a lot of mileage in terms of just like understanding where he's at. I think for the other characters, it just uses the post World War II setting to like get us in their headspace really well. And I wonder how that hits for Japanese audiences, because we'll talk a bit about like the historical identity of this movie, but we're viewing this as American audiences who understand like the facts of what happened, but I'm sure there's a like very different way that growing up in Japanese culture, like the just consciousness around post-war, post-atom bomb Japan, like even in a present day setting, like I feel like Japanese audiences are probably like engaging with that in a different headspace. But viewing it from an American perspective, I still feel like you get a lot from just seeing that these characters, like basically everyone in this movie, aside from the three women, are ex-soldiers, I think. And or I guess not all of them, because there's the one kid.
No, the kid is not, but it still affects him because he talks about how he wished he was, and that makes Koichi upset.
Mm-hmm. And I think those scenes do a lot also, just like seeing the older three men talk to each other and talk to him about it. Like you can tell that they're all going through it right now. And I feel like it could come off as like a really easy crutch to like get us invested, but it doesn't. I feel like it just locks us in really well. And I'm not quite sure why that is, but it helps with getting us invested in some of the characters that we have less time with.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And that does actually kind of transition into my topic. I don't know if we want to start on that, or if
I'm good with that.
There was more.
Angel's topic is period pieces being relatable to modern audiences.
Probably better phrasing for it would be like, why do some period pieces work and some don't? And I think this is a really good example of one that does work and why. Kind of to go off what Evan was saying, because I feel like it's a good transition. The cultural context behind movies set in like other countries and even modern day, like modern Japan, or modern like England, like any other country, like it's going to feel different to an audience that's not from there, because societally, like there's different values, there's different ways that people interact with each other, and I notice it a lot, like the more of these the more like non-English speaking films that I watch, it feels like there's this whole other atmosphere to it, because sort of the focus and the priorities of the filmmakers tend to be a little bit different. And I think that, period pieces also, they can feel sort of like just practices in, like historical reenactment if they're not done well. But the way to do them well is to really invest you in the human characters. Like focus on that human side and highlight it with the different themes surrounding the society that you're in. So in this case, it's post-World War II Japan. So we get very quickly through what Koichi's going through with, being essentially a failed kamikaze pilot and sort of like feeling like he shirked his duty. We get a very clear sense very quickly of what the values of the society are, where they are, like politically, intellectually, just mentally, as far as, just everyday people go, what the people are going through, like in a demographic sense, as far as like, the fact that they're basically, at the end, we can see like they're living in a disaster zone. They are in a place where the enemy bombed. I was going to point this out before. It's not even like the fallout from the nuclear bombs. Like, I believe these were just like standard bombings, kind of like when London was bombed by the Nazis, I think, where it's just that like, no, they were just like carpet bombing throughout the entire city, and now like this is what the aftermath is. And so we're seeing them kind of survive in that space. And what works about that is like, we don't need it to be something that we've lived through to understand what it's like to, have specific priorities, like protecting your family, or, just surviving and making enough money and doing what you have to do to eat the next day. A lot of people can relate to that in modern day too. And it's because they're focusing on like those emotional aspects and those character relationships as opposed to just like spouting historical exposition at you. Like, oh, this is what's happening, this is why. Like, there's so much in this that's just implied by the situations the characters find themselves in. And they do it in a way that, like, is respecting the audience's intelligence, not over explaining. Nothing is too melodramatic except for, you know, a couple of things maybe. Like the end where Noriko is miraculously alive. That's a little bit into the melodrama and the unbelievable side of it. But for the most part, like, it feels very grounded in, you know, its emotional highs and lows. Like, one of my favorite scenes is, the Ginza attack is close, but one of my favorites is where Koichi breaks down and, you know, his PTSD has gotten so bad that he thinks he might actually be dead and that he didn't survive the war and that basically he's in hell or purgatory or whatever. I think he was saying, like, having to watch himself fail at helping Noriko and Akiko is sort of his punishment for what he did. And it shows, like, just how hard that those sort of societal expectations that he's going through have burrowed into his brain and how it's affected him so much, and that he's also been basically told that, like, all that part of it is his fault. Like, he shouldn't even be feeling, you know, traumatized in the sense that, like, something happened to him. It's like he's being told over and over again that he did this to himself, which is obviously not true, but it adds, you know, multiple layers to all of this. Jumping back into the what we were talking about before with, like, the whole him doing moral things, one thing that really stood out to me was the job that he takes, like, really quickly. Like, within a couple of months, he takes that job where they're basically getting rid of sea mines, and it's an incredibly risky job, and, like, you can see that he doesn't hesitate to do that. That is incredibly risky, but unlike being a kamikaze pilot, it's, like, not a guaranteed death sentence. You know, there's the possibility that he could come home and, you know, he'd be helping people, but it's also something that, like, not everybody would necessarily do, showing, again, that he's not a coward, and also highlighting in the society that, like, as hard as the war was and everything like that, the hard part now is that, like, the people are essentially cleaning up the mess afterwards. Like, the military isn't doing this, they're recruiting citizens to do this. You know, and even the military is full of citizens who joined up out of a sense of duty. It's like, I'm definitely going on a bit of a tangent here, but that's kind of like where I was coming at from it, is like that focus on the human characters, the human emotions and relationships. It makes it feel like this could have honestly taken place at any time in any society. But the way that they approach it highlights the aspects of that society and enhances the themes that they're trying to go for.
I had just a few notes for this topic. Part of what works, I think, it works well here and it works well in other period pieces, is that your themes are timeless. I was thinking about, like, other period pieces that I resonate with, and I think most of them, if not all, have kind of a timeless theme that they're looking at. You can take a different route with that, and I don't think it's always a bad idea, but, like, trying to connect something historical really strongly to present day rarely works. The only case where I can think of that it has worked is Black Klansman, where at the end it shows, like, the Charlottesville March that had happened, like, a year before. At that point, I think it's effective in that movie. I don't think that's necessarily a good strategy for other things to try. It is kind of a hard rule to follow to, like, be timeless, though, because you don't know how your thing is going to age when you're making it. It's always kind of like this weird situation where any movie that you make, any story that you tell, is going to kind of be a time capsule of when you tell it. There's a bit of a different twist that goes on to that when you're doing a historical piece in not that time, because I feel like that kind of tells you a little bit of, like, what did people think of this event or this person in the time that this was made. I haven't seen this, I don't plan to see it, but I bet the Ronald Reagan biopic that just came out is going to be a very telling artifact of how certain people view Ronald Reagan in 2024. From what I've heard, it has a certain view of him that it takes that is very complimentary.
Ooh.
And like, yeah, that's I don't want to say too much with it because I haven't seen it, but that's what I'm hearing.
I'd forgotten that was coming out, to be honest.
I saw the title and I thought maybe it was like, I thought it was a horror movie, maybe maybe as like
What
a
is
sequel
it?
to Megan, but it's just a Ronald Reagan biopic. I don't know why I had that perception.
Is it
But-
called Reagan with the backwards 3?
That would be hilarious.
With the backwards E.
That would be amazing.
I would love it if they that
Ruth Reagan.
Ruth Reagan. But I bring that up just because like I think it's a way to view something that is a period piece. And Godzilla's kind of an interesting example of that because it was like the original movie was set in present day of when it was made in the 50s, set in the 50s. But it also is fictional and has become kind of this time capsule of like Godzilla is this monster that is inspired by this very specific historical event, both like in the text of its canon and like in what inspired it to be made in the first place. And I don't know if there's really any other like fictional character or thing that falls under that. Like the closest I could think of was I think the first Star Wars movie was kind of about the Vietnam War, but Star Wars since that first one I don't think has, I mean, I think you can argue that like the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi are kind of supposed to be the Viet Cong, but after that, not.
Yeah, I think Lucas has said that.
bit.
George Lucas has said that pretty explicitly.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair one to point to. But since then, like, the Acolyte's not talking about Vietnam, and it's not even talking about, like...
It's talking about the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
That's
what it's talking about.
That history that Star Wars was born from is not carrying into the rest of it. And to be fair, like, to compare to Godzilla, it's not like Godzilla X Kong was really, from what you guys are saying, it doesn't sound like that is taking any kind of nuclear influence. Like, it's not commenting on any of that. But we can still, obviously, as evidenced by this movie, make a Godzilla movie that is, like, goes back to that historical origin and still say something meaningful in 2023, which is a really interesting just place that it can hold in, like, just how we are looking at history right now. Because I don't know that any, like, I really can't imagine, like, any other fictional story doing that. Like, there's nothing that I can think of that's both a fictional character and rooted in a certain time in history so strongly. If you guys have examples, feel free.
Strongly, no.
I think the
Rooted
closest...
in history, I'd say Superman. But good.
Oh, Superman, yeah, for sure. I was honestly thinking of, like, Planet of the Apes. Because I've been watching those recently, and, like, there's definitely some stuff, like, specifically about, like, nuclear war in there. There's definitely some, like, philosophical and religious stuff involved in that, different, like, scientific philosophies and stuff, but it also, like, it's not exactly the same because it's not set in our modern world. It's meant to be, like, reflections of our modern world in a very far future setting where the dynamic of nature itself has shifted. This is so different because, like, it's saying, like, what if this big monster that was the direct consequences of problems that we just kind of overlook suddenly just showed up, right? Then we'd care, then it would affect us kind of directly. I think this is why this one hit for me more, because like you were saying, Evan, it's sort of touching on that a little more directly as far as what I think you were saying as far as, like, you know, the whole nuclear disaster idea, whereas, like, the American Godzilla movies have kind of just become, like, hitting action figures into each other, which also has merit to, in and of itself, I think, where it's like, this is a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, and I think a franchise can have both those things.
But they turn Godzilla into a superhero.
Well, and to, like, I was thinking of King Kong as another comparison, because, like, that, I feel like it's less rooted in, like, a historical time, But the original King Kong movie was kind of like supposed to be sort of a metaphor for colonialism. And I'm not surprised that like later Kong installments, like I mean we had like the Peter Jackson King Kong that was
Right.
set in the 30s and is basically a remake, but it's not really saying anything about like how we were dealing with colonialism in 2005. And even like I don't love the way that movie portrays like the native people of Skull Island. Like
I hate that part so much. There's so
it,
many things wrong.
I mean, I was only 6 in 2005, so I wasn't really tapped into the reaction, but like I can't imagine it went over great then, but also the internet wasn't the place that it is now, so I can see
That's
how
very
it
true.
kind of got a pass.
That was the first year of YouTube before we could watch video essays on it.
Pretty sure the OG King Kong was racist in nature.
Yeah.
It was King Kong was supposed to be a black man taking a white woman, and they shoot
Yeah.
down the big black man from the Empire State Building. Save the day, save the white woman. That's what it was.
Yeah, like that's sort of what that monster is, like the fear that it's born from. So I get why they don't want to do that, because like one, if you do it like straight ahead, that's not gonna fly at all today. And like it did in the 30s, but the 30s were not a great time for like race in America.
Most people, I would say.
And but like the 2005 version is still pretty recent and is not doing any like it's pretty much just doing the story without really doing any kind of commentary there. Like if somebody can like read into any subtext that Peter Jackson is bringing to that, I'll listen to it. To my eye, it really doesn't look like it's just kind of like, all right, this was the 30s movie, we're just doing the 30s movie.
Yeah,
Like, it's
that's what I'm
not
saying. It's like the
doing it
period piece for
with
the
that
sake
in
of the
mind.
period. You know,
Yeah.
like just doing it, be like, oh, this is cool, this is stylish, which like that can be fun, but especially like given that King Kong could have used that very modern update where it's kind of trying to send the opposite message of that would have probably been better.
But I thought it was an interesting choice when they made Skull Island that they make it a pretty direct Vietnam War thing. Especially like in 2017, Vietnam's not really an issue that was being taught. Like we kind of like have our like view of that pretty set right now. Like,
Yeah.
that movie is trying to reshape how we think about Vietnam. It's just like, all right, this is a historical time that can kind of fit with the continuity we're doing for this universe.
Yeah, there's not much debate about it.
Yeah, it almost feels like they did that to like make it about something, but completely divorce it from the like racist undertones that character originates from. So I feel like that movie is not doing anything with theme, but it sort of is doing aesthetics that can make you think about a theme. So it's like an approach to do. I'm not saying they should like do anything like revisionist with King Kong. I don't know that that's the move, but it's like interesting that you can make this Godzilla movie that does like historically take us back to the origins of the character, but also say something and like grapple with themes that are rooted in that historical time, but still feel like survivor's guilt, feeling abandoned by your government, and like communities coming together to help each other. Like those are themes that can still resonate today. And I don't feel like they're tied. I don't feel like this movie's saying, at least to my eyes, it's not saying like this is still relevant and pointing to anything in a modern context that like fits as a metaphor there, but it still resonates.
Well, nuclear war.
It's still out, yeah.
It's been a threat
Not in the
since,
same way it was, but yeah, no,
No.
absolutely.
It's been a threat since before Godzilla's inception in '54. The first bomb was 1945. So, with that still being a threat, if you somehow find the courage or energy to read the news daily, the constant threat of a World War III happening with nuclear warfare, that still hangs over our heads. So, it's relevant. But also, big monster movies have been around for decades, so even if you don't go looking for a deeper meaning, it's still fun to watch the destruction.
That's true.
I like Man of Steel for the same reason, among other reasons, because it's like, as you said, Angel, watching those action figure fights in live action. It's
Also, Man of Steel is just a good movie. Like,
thank you.
in my
Thank you.
opinion, highly underrated. Like, I remember
You
watching it in theater, I'm
are-
like, this is so cool.
You are going to be on the Man of Steel episode. You're locked in for that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
That's
care.
because I've wanted to rewatch that. No, for
Good.
sure. Absolutely. I would love that.
Good. Add him to the list, the future episode
Okay,
list of Man of Steel, please.
can add that.
We need some more on my
I
side.
don't
Thank
know
you.
where I will fall on that. I haven't seen it all the way through since the theater. So, yeah.
Baseline. It's cool as hell.
Yeah.
That's why he's still around. It's cool to watch this. That blast where even the shot behind he doesn't even get this blast off, but the shot behind me of him just charging, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Though I did want to say, this doesn't really fit with the topic we're on. The combination of the score and the slow pan up as his tail goes boom boom. That is the scariest monster shot I think I've seen in any that is so intimidating. That whole build up the first time I saw it, I was just like, oh fuck, this is gonna be huge.
Imagine watching
And,
that from the ground, too. Like, you're
It-
seeing it from a distance,
yeah.
but you know what's happening. You can kind of guess what's happening, that he's charging up. It's crazy.
Yeah, if
And
this
that's-
is your first Godzilla movie and you somehow don't know what's about to happen, you still get that dread in you.
Yeah.
The only time I think, because because he does the blast a lot, but this is top 3 for me, but I think the only one that beats it is, I think it was King of Monsters, where he shoots the blast inside of the monster and
Into the mouth.
decapitates it.
Yeah.
What? Rule of cool, dude. End of the day,
Yeah.
that's just awesome. That's just awesome.
No, but I agree with you. That is pretty sick. And it's showing he's not just smashing into things either. He's just genuinely just destructive.
Walking.
And all of it was caused by all of it was nuclear. So much of it was the human factor of it. They literally created a not just a dinosaur, but a dinosaur with literal superpowers.
That shot of those, first of all, why were they there? Second, maybe it's rule of cool again. The shot of the newscasters on the building,
roof?
and then they just, that was so sick. It was so scary, but
I was
so
laughing
cool to
so
see
hard
that.
watching it last night.
It is kind of
I'm like,
funny.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're so
Yeah.
they're so committed to the news that they just
Yeah.
refuse to move. It's like a scene from Anchorman.
Yeah.
It
And now he's
truly
coming
is.
right towards us. Oh God, he's looking right at us. Yeah, it's goofy, but that shot is cool. So, really cool.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if this is ever an angle they're gonna take. I feel like you could kind of turn Godzilla into a climate change metaphor a little bit, as nature taking revenge on humanity for pollution and
There's a
nuclear
couple
waste and
characters
stuff.
like that in comic. I think Swamp Thing from DC Comics is that too.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I know you probably don't.
I've heard of Swamp Thing. I don't think I've seen him in anything. So
Okay, welcome back. You don't know just yet, but we had quite a bit of a tangent. Let's get into
yeah, if you
Evans-
want to hear the tangent, subscribe to Patreon, and it'll be there within a few months once I make the season 6 tangents episode.
It's a long one.
It's a long
I'm being
one.
told.
You'll get to know just
yeah.
how distracting I am.
Yeah. Well,
we
it's
broke
good.
a record just now.
We broke a record. My
Anyway,
topic.
Feel
Theme, yes, Evan's topic, theme of collective action.
Yes,
Go.
the theme of collective action, aka why this movie is Dunkirk but better. Getting the aesthetic reasons out of the way. It's a World War II movie with a lot of people on boats. I was thinking about Dunkirk a lot watching this, and I'll try not to make the discussion hinge too much on that, especially because I know that's one of Jelani's least favorites that I've made you watch for this podcast.
I straight up don't even remember it. I don't remember
We're on the
anything
same
from
page.
Dunkirk.
I did not like Dunkirk that much.
I like it, but that's okay.
I think somebody almost drowns at some point, right?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay, cool. I don't know who, because they didn't have names, but... Oh, Tom Hardy's in it, right? As a pilot?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the other comparison, too, is there's people on boats and there's people in planes.
In planes.
And
okay.
I was thinking a lot about, like, what I heard Nolan talk about in interviews for Dunkirk, for, like, what he was going for, because he was saying a lot about, like, I want you to sympathize with these people, not because of, like, any backstory that I give them, just because of the situation that they're in. And he goes very hard into, like, you're not going to know almost anybody's names, you're not going to know any history, you're just going to see them thrown into this situation, and that's what's going to make you empathize with them. And in that case, I'm like, I see what you're trying for, and I think it is, like, in theory, supporting the theme that you're going for, but this movie pulls it off a lot better. We talked already about the characters that we do spend time with and how much that lends to, like, just making this a more engaging movie. I think in the second half, it actually does a really good job of investing me in the nameless characters as well. Nolan, I feel like, almost counterintuitively, like, because he tries too hard in Dunkirk, it does a worse job. Like, it's really simple, the things that make me care about the minor characters. Like, the one moment that really sells me on everyone is when they, like, gather everyone together after the Ginza attack, and they say, hey, we basically want volunteers. We can't keep you here, but you're all ex-military. I hate that we have to ask you to like, put yourself in danger for your country again, but this is how we're going to do it. And then, like, 20% of the room-ish leaves, and then 80% stays. What a small but simple and effective way to just, like, give these characters some level of humanity. Like, I feel like most other movies, when you have a scene in a crowd like that, you have, like, the entire crowd basically react the same way. And I always feel like that's it's too reductive. And this is just a good example of, you don't have to do that. Like, don't lean into the mob psychology of it. Just, like, treat these characters, even if we're not going to get to know any of them, treat them with enough respect to show that each of them is going to make their own decision here. And then we just get a real quick, like, maybe 30-second, might go into, like, a minute or so, but just, I think 2 or 3 characters just, like, ask a question. I don't know what they ask. I can't remember. But it's 2 characters who we never hear from again. And it just sells me on, like, all right, this is, like, what I would ask in that situation too. Or what, it doesn't even have to be what I would ask. The fact that they're just taking the time to, like, give us some kind of, like, identification with these nameless people goes such a long way. And then the rest of the movie, you even have, like, just a few shots showing us a bunch of nameless characters. And
the shots of them prior to this scene when he's about to fire the beam, where they're all, like, in slow motion, I was like, oh, they're screwed. But then old boy drops him. But go ahead.
Well, I think it's also, like, in a movie like this, you even have some shots in the Ginza attack and the one before where you're just kind of showing random nameless people running away or getting eaten or whatever. That's a pretty standard kind of way to show, like, just random innocent lives being killed off in this kind of movie, or not, depending on it. But I feel like there's something in the shots near the end when they're all on the boats that's just maybe there's like something in the visual composition of it, but I feel like there's just more respect for those characters put into it. And I think another thing that goes a long way is the fact that we're not cutting back to Koichi a lot during the climax. Like, he's there to lure Godzilla away, and then we don't show him again until he flies in at the end. I think that just does a lot to de-center him as our protagonist for that scene, so that you feel more of the like group effort with everyone. And I think that's part of why the kid bringing all the boats back, or like basically doing a Dunkirk almost literally, and just bringing out civilian boats to like help save the day.
Is that what happens?
Kind of. I mean, that's basically the premise of Dunkirk. I feel like I would hate that moment in other movies, but this has done a good job at investing me in just random people with just those couple of simple scenes that I'm like, yeah, I buy that. I'm sure it's not everyone, but it's like some people stepped up. And you also kind of have like just a couple of lines. We talked earlier about how like the American government is sort of an invisible villain in this movie. The Japanese government kind of seems to fall into that as well. They kind of talk at a couple points about how they feel like their government has maybe not like deliberately hurt them, but just they're not going to help us here. We got to do it ourselves.
Dude is a mouthpiece for it. I forget his name though. The one
like,
who
ex-general guy who seems to be in charge.
No. Well, he called the characters Doc and Kid. I forget his name though.
Oh,
he was part of the crew
of the smaller boat captain. Yeah.
He always talked about
how,
the country.
Like, the thing that they're best at is holding back information
and covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like that is really what it is, and that honestly that stood out to me more than like the way that the U.S. is kind of a silent villain. Like as I was watching it was how like a lot of this movie is about how these people are paying the price for something that for like their government using them as pawns in this war, essentially. Like not only did they inherit all this destruction that the government is clearly not making efforts to really rebuild, but they are also now having to be the only ones that come up with a solution to save their own lives. And the government's nowhere to be seen during any of this.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at that, and it lends itself well to like I don't really know how that fits in terms of like Japanese cultural consciousness or like the history of this time. In terms of genre, I feel like it kind of elevates it because every other monster movie always had, the Monsterverse has Monarch. There's like some well-funded, usually government-affiliated organization. Independence Day, the president is like our protagonist, essentially, maybe just behind Will Smith. Like, you always have the military coming in and bringing all of its might, whether that does anything or not. And it is more powerful to just have it be like, yeah, I mean, we can get one fighter and maybe a couple of destroyers that are going to do nothing. But I love the line from the doctor. Is it Noda? Dr. Noda?
Yeah, Noda.
When everyone's signing up, he's like, our goal is to get everyone home safely. Our government has treated life far too cheaply.
Yeah.
We can't be like them. And
our plan requires no human sacrifice.
Especially with like that paired with Koichi as a kamikaze pilot. Like, I should look this up because I am curious about like, is that a radical thing to say in present day Japan, or is that kind of like where that culture is at in terms of dealing with this history? Like, do people kind of denounce the like just existence of kamikaze pilots, or is it something that's valorized to them? I'm not sure. I'd just be curious.
Yeah, I don't know
I feel
either.
like it changes how they would read this movie pretty significantly.
Take the flight over.
I'll probably just
them.
do a quick YouTube search instead, but maybe
Well,
someday.
it was more fun. YouTube search or taking the flight to Japan and asking.
I really hate jet lag, so I don't know.
Well, what's more expensive, taking the flight to Japan or doing a YouTube search?
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know which is more expensive. Which is more expensive emotionally, we'll say.
Yes. You could learn Japanese, Evan. Think about
I mean, if
that.
I'm not learning Japanese, am I even trying? If I can't watch this movie without subtitles, am I even?
As I was gonna say, yeah, because even with subtitles, we don't know how well the subtitles translate. They just happen to translate better than the English dub.
That's why you gotta watch anime, Evan. Once you watch enough anime, you know all of Japanese.
You learn all of Japanese from just like one season of JoJo.
Yeah. Season 7 will come back with like the anime hairstyle, the bowl cut or it's not a bowl cut. It's like the flute. I don't know what to call it.
The swoop.
All the things, and I'll be doing the Naruto run and everything. Okay, did you guys have notes or any points on that aside from what you said?
You said everything. Other than I don't remember Dunkirk. I enjoy the collective effort of defeating Godzilla. It takes all of the survivors and ex-vets to do so. And even then, they still don't kill him, but the movie ended, so we're good.
I'm with Jelani on Dunkirk. I remember I made the mistake of starting to watch it on a plane, and then I immediately stopped because I'm like, this isn't the way I'm supposed to watch this. This is why it's not hitting for me. I'm going to wait, and then I watched it at home, and I'm like, this is still not my favorite. Like, it's definitely like one of my least favorite Nolan ones, but I think it's because of what you were saying before.
It's low in my ranking too, but I still like it.
Yeah, I think it's from what you were saying before though, like where it's I understood what he was going for with the not giving characters backstories, like, and that we'll care anyway, and I did kind of, but also it felt like that's also what made me feel detached, if that makes sense. And I didn't feel
he overestimated humans.
Exactly.
He overestimated our capacity for empathy.
I'm not even sure that Christopher Nolan writes humans, to be honest with you. I love his movies.
All right.
I love his movies so much, except Tenet, which we also have talked about, Evan.
Yes.
I do not love Tenet, but I love every other one, including Dunkirk. I just think that there are definitely...
Insomnia? Because I'm a big fan.
I liked Insomnia. I didn't love Insomnia, but I liked Insomnia.
I should try it again, but it really bored me.
Yeah, I can understand it. It
sounded like it did the opposite of what the movie's doing.
It almost put me to sleep, yeah. I should try it again,
for Insomnia. Then. That's the full title, is The Cure for Insomnia. And then the sequel's The Cure for Wellness.
Oh, wow, that movie. Our next episode, or at least an upcoming one, is Baby Driver. We have our YouTube channel with video essays and other stuff, all of the podcasts. We have our Patreon, where you can hear the tangents that we have sometimes, including our new record, the longest one. But that won't be there until probably like January, February.
It's a doozy.
But there's 2 full episodes of it already, and we've also got watch-alongs up there and a couple bonus episodes.
Good laughs, all of them. Especially the tangent stuff.
The tangents have some, like, there's a reason they're not in the episodes, but there's... If you're a fan of director's cuts, they are good extra material.
Angel, there's one episode where we started out... the tangent starts out with me wondering how lotion tastes, and then it ends
comes out of nowhere.
It ends with Evan ending up buying washcloths for his bathroom. Don't ask me how.
I think that was our longest one before today's.
And wait, how? But then how was our? Because you had to go and buy washcloths.
Okay, I didn't do it that day.
No, not during.
Oh, okay. I see. I was gonna say, how is it possible that ours was longer? But no, that makes more sense then.
No,
I didn't buy it until like a couple months later, but that was what convinced me.
I need to check that out now, because I need to know how we went. First of all, how the lotion thing even came up.
It
happens to me a couple of times.
It was so random. He was just like, I think it was the Mission Impossible episode, and we're like a few, maybe 15 minutes in, and he just goes, You guys ever think about how lotion tastes?
Every now and then,
And then
I taste a
David and I are
little
just
bit
like,
lotion.
There was
No.
one where I wanted pretzels, and then that ended in something else too.
I think
Lotion
that might have
pretzels?
just been itself, and that was. The
Oh, did
only
that just
thing.
stay there?
I think so. I don't know if I put that in the
Okay.
tangent episode either. I think that was that might have been before I started compiling them.
That might have stayed in an episode.
I think I think I put that at like the tag of whatever one it was from. Anyway, that's all on Patreon.
Yeah.
And yeah, final boilerplate stuff. Our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at ev_Wes. And Angel, let's start with you. Where are you at that
Yeah.
people can find you?
Oh, I have a few things. I would say my main letterboxd is Serenity Cinema. It's all just one word. Serenity, like basically just how the words are spelled. And then I have the same Instagram. I'm also on AngelsArc15 on Instagram. Yeah, those are probably my main ones. So yeah, if you guys want to follow me there, that would be dope.
We can link to those in the description for people. I think I'll have to find them because I think I only follow you on Letterboxd. So
I feel like you have me on Instagram too. At least one of them.
Might. I don't check Instagram very much, so I wouldn't really know. Anyway, Jelani, you can drop yours too.
You already know. You already know what it is. You already know who I am. I'm on Instagram at Jelani T Kelly, YouTube Jelani T Kelly. We just released a proof of concept pilot, Fit Mess. So like fitness, but with an M. Workplace comedy. So check that out if you can find that. I tried to search Fit Mess and it just autocorrected to fitness. So good luck finding it, but check that out.
You might also be able to see Jelani in a... I don't know how broadly this has been circulated, but I happened upon it organically.
You were the only one I knew that. I don't know how you found it because I haven't even gotten it.
Yeah, it's a commercial about nuclear energy. That
Funnily enough,
oddly relevant for what this episode was, but that I've come across that ad on YouTube a couple of times. I don't know how to find it.
it's on
otherwise.
Facebook. I've only found it on Facebook, and that's how I sent it to people. But I'm waiting for them to post it on something more relevant.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about nuclear energy, but I'm glad that commercial is getting some kind of distribution for you.
I'm gonna stay quiet on that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to say anything. But always like to see you getting work. So, cool. So, Angel, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was a great time.
Thanks for being here.